Maybe you've asked this before. Quietly, late at night when the world feels still, if there's no self, who becomes enlightened? It's a strange question, right? It sounds simple, but somehow it feels like it carries the weight of something big, like trying to touch the edge of a dream you can't quite remember. Before we go any further, take a breath with me. Don't rush to figure it out. Just let the question sit there for a moment, like a pebble dropped into a pond, rippling slowly outward. If you love sitting with these kinds of gentle questions, the ones that make you pause and feel a little more alive inside, maybe hit that subscribe button. Not because you should, but because we walk this path together, slowly, quietly, and with a lot of heart. You know, the funny thing about that question, who becomes enlightened, is that it already assumes there's a solid person waiting for a certificate of enlightenment. Like there's a me traveling through time, collecting lessons, and someday that me will win the grand prize called awakening. But the more we look, the more that idea starts to slip through our fingers. It's like trying to hold mist in your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it disappears. The Buddha once told his disciple Ananda that chasing the idea of a permanent someone is like trying to catch a shadow. There isn't a fixed person hiding inside you. There's just a constant flow of thoughts, emotions, memories, sensations, all passing through. Maybe that's hard to swallow, because we spend our whole lives calling this collection me. My body, my story, my feelings. But maybe, just maybe, what we call me is more like a river than a rock. Think about it. When you stand by a river, you can point and say, that's the Mississippi or that's the Hudson. But the water you're pointing at keeps moving. It's never the same water twice. In that same way, you're never exactly the same person twice. Every thought, every breath, every heartbeat changes you. And yet, we cling so tightly to an image of who we think we are, an image built out of memories and hopes and fears. When something hurts, we say, I'm in pain. When someone leaves us, we whisper, they broke my heart. And that's okay. It's human to speak that way. But underneath all those words, something softer is happening. Pain comes and goes. Joy comes and goes. Even the thoughts about pain and joy, they all drift like clouds across the same open sky. The sky doesn't hold on to them. It doesn't say, these are my clouds. It just lets them pass. Maybe awareness, the simple knowing that you're here, is like that sky, always open, always allowing, never judging. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's not something you have. It just is. And in that space, life unfolds. There's laughter, there's sorrow, there's everything in between. But there's no little person pulling the strings behind it all. I once met an old man in a quiet town in Colorado. He was sitting outside a small cafe, watching the sunset. He told me, you know, son, I used to think I was somebody important. A husband, a father, a teacher. Then one day I lost everything I thought made me who I was. And you know what I found? Just sitting here, breathing, watching the light change. That was enough. I didn't disappear. I just stopped needing to be somebody. I never forgot that. Maybe enlightenment starts right there, with the courage to stop chasing the idea of being someone special. The Buddha said our sense of self comes from not seeing things clearly. We crave, we cling, we build stories around everything that happens to us. We say, this is mine, or that shouldn't happen to me. It's okay, we all do it. But the problem isn't that we crave. It's that we believe the story so deeply we forget it's just a story. It's like mistaking a mirage for an oasis. You keep running toward it, thinking it'll quench your thirst. But the closer you get, the more it fades away. Maybe that's how we live, running towards something that can't be grasped, chasing happiness through identities that never last. But when we pause, when we let the mind rest even for a breath, something amazing happens. We begin to notice the quiet background behind all the noise, the gentle awareness that has been here all along, the one that doesn't come and go. Not my awareness, not your awareness, just awareness. The clear sky behind every passing storm. Sometimes it shows up in small moments, like when you're washing dishes and suddenly realize the sound of water is just beautiful, or when you hold a friend's hand and there's no thought, just warmth. In that instant, there's no me and you. There's only being. Simple, whole, and peaceful. So maybe the question isn't who becomes enlightened. Maybe the better question is, what happens when the idea of someone drops away? When we stop fighting, stop grasping, and simply allow life to be what it is, right here, right now. And if you've listened this far, maybe it's because some part of you already feels that truth. Maybe you've sensed, even for a second, that you are not separate from the world around you. You're the sky, the river, the light, and the shadow, all flowing together in this strange, beautiful dance called being alive. So stay with me. We're just beginning this journey. There's more to explore. How awakening unfolds when there's no self to reach for it, and how that understanding quietly transforms the way we live. If that speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe. Not for numbers, not for likes, but to walk together a little further on this path of quiet discovery. You know, after sitting with that question, if there's no self, who becomes enlightened, something begins to shift. The mind quiets down a little. The heart opens. And another question rises gently from that silence. If there's no self, then how does awakening even happen? Maybe that sounds confusing, but don't worry, it's okay. We don't have to solve it like a math problem. Think of it more like watching a flower bloom. The flower doesn't have a plan. It doesn't say, I'll open my petals tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp. It just happens when the sunlight and the rain and the soil all meet in their own timing. Awakening, in many ways, is like that. It isn't something someone achieves. It's something that happens when the right conditions quietly come together. Sometimes those conditions look like heartbreak. Sometimes like deep silence. Sometimes they come through laughter or even through pain. Life itself becomes a teacher. When you stop trying to be the one who controls everything, you begin to see that awakening doesn't require your permission. It unfolds the same way the dawn comes. Not because anyone pulls the sun up, but because the darkness naturally gives way when the time is right. I remember a woman I once met in Oregon. She'd gone through a long illness that took almost everything from her. Her job, her comfort, her plans. She told me that one night, lie awake unable to sleep, she realized that even though her body was weak, something in her was completely untouched. There was this simple awareness watching it all, not judging, not fixing, just there. And she whispered, I understood in that moment that life didn't need me to control it. It just needed me to be present. That's how awakening often begins. Quietly, in moments we least expect. You see, enlightenment isn't a reward. It's a kind of seeing. It's when the fog clears and the landscape was always there. We just couldn't see it before. There's a beautiful saying, when the clouds move, the sky doesn't appear. It was there all along. Maybe that's what awakening is. The clouds of confusion drift away, and we realize the clear sky was never gone. But how do we live that truth in the middle of real life, with bills, heartbreak, noise, endless thoughts? Maybe we start by simply watching. Watch your thoughts rise and fall like waves on the ocean. You don't need to stop them. You don't need to fix them. Just notice. That's the beginning of freedom. Not pushing or pulling, just seeing. One simple thing you can try. The next time you're upset, pause. Don't rush to say, I'm angry. Instead, quietly notice, anger is here. Feel how different that sounds. Suddenly, it's not you who's angry. Anger is just something moving through, like wind through the trees. It's not personal. It's just part of nature. When we start observing instead of reacting, something subtle changes. Between two thoughts, there's a tiny gap, a small space where nothing is happening. That space is golden. It's peaceful, still alive. You don't have to create it. You don't even have to hold on to it. Just notice it, and you'll see that it's always been there, waiting quietly behind the noise. Maybe that's what the Buddha meant when he said wisdom arises when ignorance fades away. He didn't mean ignorance as stupidity. He meant the fog that covers our natural clarity, the mistaken belief that we are separate, isolated selves. When that fog thins out, understanding shines through by itself. It's not an effort. It's not a project. It's like when you stop stirring muddy water, the dirt settles and the water clears on its own. All we have to do is stop stirring so much. Maybe that's why meditation is less about doing and more about allowing. There's this beautiful line I once heard. Enlightenment isn't about becoming something more. It's about realizing there was never anything missing. And maybe that's true. The problem is never that we're not awakened. It's that we keep overlooking what's right here because we're so busy searching somewhere else. Sometimes, even while sitting quietly, the mind says, okay, how do I get there? What should I do next? How long will it take? And maybe the softest answer is, you're already there. You've just been looking in the wrong direction. So maybe awakening isn't about finding something new. It's about noticing what never left. The part of you that watches thoughts come and go. The part that stays when everything else changes. That's not you in the usual sense. It's not a character in your story. It's the quiet awareness behind the story. It's what was there before you had a name, before you learned right from wrong, before you became someone. And maybe when we live from that place, that open, spacious awareness, we don't have to keep fixing ourselves anymore. We just meet each moment as it is. Sometimes peaceful, sometimes messy, sometimes full of laughter, sometimes full of tears. And that's okay. You don't need to be perfect to wake up. You just need to be honest. You just need to stop pretending that life has to look a certain way before you can rest in it. So maybe the path isn't about getting anywhere. Maybe it's about noticing that we've never actually left. If you're feeling that gentle spark of recognition inside, that small voice that says, I think I understand what this means. Hold on to that feeling, not with effort, but with love. Let it guide you quietly. And if you like to keep walking together through this kind of reflection, you know what to do. Hit subscribe, stay close, and take the next step with me in part 3. Because in the next part, we'll talk about what happens after awakening, when this understanding deepens, and life itself becomes the expression of that freedom. So now, maybe the question isn't what is awakening, but how do we live once we've touched it? Because awakening isn't the end of the story. It's not some bright finish line where you get a certificate saying, you did it, you're enlightened now. It's more like a gentle beginning, a doorway opening to a new way of being in the world. At first, it might feel strange. The things that used to matter so much, winning arguments, being right, being admired, they start to feel a little lighter, a little less urgent. It's not that you stop caring. It's that you don't cling so tightly anymore. You start to realize that peace isn't found in controlling the world, but in letting the world flow through you. You still laugh, still cry, still get frustrated sometimes, but there's a softness underneath it all. It's like standing in the rain and realizing you don't need an umbrella anymore. The rain isn't a problem. It's just part of life. You can feel it, even enjoy it, without getting lost in the storm. I remember a man I met once, a retired teacher, simple and quiet. He told me something that stayed with me ever since. He said, "After awakening, I still make mistakes. I still forget things, still spill my coffee, still lose my keys. The only difference is I don't make a problem out of it anymore." I love that, because isn't that what freedom really means? Not that life becomes perfect, but that we stop fighting what already is. You see, awakening doesn't take away your humanity. It deepens it. You feel everything more fully. The joy, the sorrow, the small moments between, they all become part of one great dance. When you're no longer trapped in the story of me, you can finally see the beauty in the ordinary, the sunlight through the window, the sound of a bird outside, the way a child laughs from across the street. And maybe that's what the Buddha meant when he spoke about compassion, not as an idea, but as something that flows naturally when the illusion of separateness fades. When you see that the pain in another's eyes is not different from your own, your heart can't help but soften. You don't need to force kindness. It just rises like a spring bubbling up from the ground. There's this quiet knowing that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. And even when people hurt you, even when they misunderstand, you don't need to hate them anymore. You just see they're suffering too, caught in their own stories. And in seeing that something in you lets go, sometimes awakening feels like losing everything you thought you were. But slowly, it gives back something far greater, a peace that doesn't depend on anything outside. It's like you stop living from the surface of the ocean, where every wave feels like a storm, and you begin to live from the depth, where the water is still and silent, no matter what happens above. And in that silence, you realize something beautiful. You never needed to be anyone special to be free. You just needed to be here, truly here. Maybe that's why awakened people often seem so ordinary. They laugh easily. They don't take themselves too seriously. They walk slowly, talk softly, love deeply. Because when you're not constantly trying to prove your worth, every breath becomes a kind of prayer. Every step, a small moment of gratitude. And here's something that might surprise you. Awakening doesn't mean your life stops having problems. You still get sick. People still die. There's still uncertainty. But somehow it's all okay. Because beneath the chaos, there's a quiet rhythm, a deep trust that life knows what it's doing, even when you don't. There's a saying I love. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The tasks don't change, you do. Washing the dishes becomes sacred. Listening to a friend becomes meditation. Sitting with your own sadness becomes an act of love. Everything becomes alive again because you're no longer rushing through it. Maybe you felt glimpses of this, those moments when you're fully present, not lost in thought, not chasing the next thing. Maybe it happens when you watch the sunset or hold someone's hand or just breathe deeply after a long day. In those moments, you're not trying to be spiritual. You're just awake, and that's enough. So, if you ever think you're not there yet, take a breath and remember, there's nowhere to get to. You can't lose what you already are. The peace you're searching for isn't waiting at the end of some path. It's quietly sitting in your heart, even now. Sometimes, awakening doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like sitting in your kitchen, realizing the tea has gone cold, and smiling anyway. It looks like forgiving yourself. It looks like finally saying, maybe this moment is enough. And maybe, just maybe, it always was. So as we walk together on this quiet path, if something in these words has touched you, if it reminds you of something you've always known deep down, stay with me. There's more to explore, more to feel, more to remember. Subscribe if you haven't yet, not because it helps the channel, but because it helps you stay connected to the shared reflection, this little space where we slow down, breathe, and remember what truly matters. In the next part, we'll go a little deeper into something beautiful, how love transforms after awakening, how it becomes not about needing, but about seeing. I'll meet you there in part 4. You know, one of the most beautiful things that begins to change after awakening is love. Not the kind of love we're used to, the kind that depends on someone being ours, or on them staying, or on them making us feel safe. It's something quieter, deeper, freer. It's love without possession. Before awakening, love often feels like a kind of hunger. We meet someone and they make us feel seen, and we think, this is it. This is what I've been missing. And for a while, it's magic. But slowly, fear sneaks in. Fear of losing them. Fear of not being enough. Fear that maybe the love won't last. And that fear turns something pure into something heavy. But after awakening, love shifts. It's not about holding on anymore. It's about letting be. You still care, maybe even more than before, but without the walls, without the chains. You love because it's your nature to love, not because you're trying to fill a hole. Imagine watching someone you care about laugh, that easy, unguarded kind of laugh that comes from their whole being. In that moment, you don't think about whether they'll stay or leave. You just feel joy because their joy is your joy. That's awakened love. It's not about you. It's about seeing life express itself through another person and smiling because it's beautiful. There's a story I once heard about a Zen monk who fell deeply in love with a woman in his village before he became a monk. But when she married someone else, he didn't resist or curse fate. He simply said, "May her days be peaceful." And he meant it, because when you love someone truly, their happiness doesn't have to depend on your presence. Now, that doesn't mean love after awakening is cold or distant. In fact, it's the opposite. It's warmer, more real, more tender, because it's not about control. When you stop needing love to complete you, it becomes something pure, like light. You can love deeply and still be free. Maybe you felt glimpses of that kind of love before, like when you watch the sunset and feel something swell in your chest. Not because the sunset belongs to you, but because its beauty touches something wordless inside. That's the same feeling. True love and awakening meet in the same place. The space where everything is allowed to be exactly as it is. And maybe that's what we've all been longing for all along. Not a love that promises forever, but one that holds this moment completely. When you begin to live from awareness, relationships change too. You stop needing people to understand you perfectly. You stop trying to fix them. You just listen. You see them clearly, their fears, their hopes, their tenderness, and you let them be human. That's love. It doesn't mean you let everyone walk all over you. No, awakened love has boundaries too, but they're kind. You can say no with an open heart. You can walk away without anger. You can forgive without pretending the pain never happened. Because love, in its pure form, doesn't erase truth. It holds truth gently, without turning it into bitterness. Maybe that's what compassion really is. Love that no longer asks for anything in return. You see the struggle in others, and instead of judgment, your heart just whispers, "I understand." You realize everyone is carrying something. Everyone is trying to make it through. And when you love from that space, Something miraculous happens. The line between you and others begins to fade. You feel their joy as your own, their pain as your own, and yet somehow you're not drowning in it. You're simply connected, like waves that rise and fall on the same ocean. I think that's why the awakened heart is both soft and strong. Soft enough to feel deeply, strong enough not to break every time the world changes. It's a strange paradox. The more you open, the safer you feel. Because safety doesn't come from walls. It comes from understanding. There's a quiet truth hidden in all this. When you stop needing love, you finally have room to receive it. Not because you're trying, but because your heart is no longer busy protecting itself. And life, in its mysterious way, begins to love you back. Through small acts, through faces, through moments you didn't even notice before. Maybe you're listening to this and thinking, that sounds beautiful, but I still feel lonely sometimes. That's okay. Everyone does. Even the awakened heart knows the ache of missing, the longing for connection. But now, that longing isn't a wound, it's part of the beauty. It's a reminder that love wants to keep flowing, that it's alive in you. You can sit alone at night, hear the sound of wind outside, and whisper, I'm still connected. Because you are, always. And if someone walks into your life, a friend, a partner, even a stranger, and your hearts recognize each other for a moment, don't rush to define it. Just be there. Feel it. Let it move through you like music. Because awakened love isn't something you own. It's something you share. You see, enlightenment doesn't take away love. It takes away the fear that keeps love from being real. And when that fear is gone, every person becomes a doorway into something sacred. So maybe love after awakening isn't something you do. It's what you are. If these words are touching something soft in you, that quiet knowing that maybe, just maybe, you've been loved by life all along, stay here with me. Let's keep walking gently through the space together. You can subscribe if you want to stay close, not as a follower, but as a companion on this path of remembering. Because in the next part, we'll explore something many people never talk about, how suffering still exists even after awakening, but how it changes its shape, how it becomes not an enemy, but a teacher. You know, one of the hardest things for people to understand, even those who've touched awakening, is that suffering doesn't just disappear. Life still moves, the seasons still change, people still leave, bodies still ache. Awakening doesn't erase pain. It just changes your relationship with it. Before awakening, pain feels personal. It feels like my heartbreak, my loss, my failure. And because of that, we resist it. We fight it. We want it to stop. But after awakening, something shifts quietly inside. You begin to see that pain isn't something happening to you. It's just something happening, like rain falling, like thunder rolling through the sky. The clouds don't apologize for the storm, and the sky doesn't complain. Everything moves in its own rhythm. And when awareness is there, you can feel pain fully without drowning in it. You start to notice that behind the ache, there's always stillness. Behind every wave, there's a deep ocean. I remember an old monk once said, "The awakened one still feels sorrow when someone dies. The difference is, he doesn't cling to the sorrow." That touched me deeply, because we sometimes imagine enlightenment as a state of eternal bliss. But it's not that. It's more real than that. It's being completely human, but without being trapped in the story of suffering. Maybe you've noticed it too, how sometimes when you stop fighting your sadness, it softens on its own. When you stop saying, "This shouldn't be happening," the pain becomes lighter, like it's allowed to breathe. That's the quiet magic of awareness. It doesn't fix life. It lets life be seen. After awakening, you start to recognize suffering not as a punishment, but as a teacher. Every time pain arises, it's showing you where you're still holding on. It's pointing to the corners of your heart that are still asking to be seen, still asking for love. And that's not failure, that's grace. There's a beauty in learning to sit with your pain without running, to just be there, soft, open, breathing, as life moves through you. Maybe tears fall, maybe silence comes, but through it all, something deeper is watching, patient and still. That's the awareness you are. That's what doesn't break. I remember hearing about a woman who lost her son and spent years in grief. But one day, while sitting in her garden, she said she suddenly felt the wind brush her face. And in that moment, she knew her love for him was still alive, just no longer bound to his body. The love remained. The story changed, but the essence didn't. That's what awakening reveals. That underneath loss, there's something that can't be lost. You begin to live with both the ache and the peace side by side. You cry, but you're not lost. You feel sorrow, but you also feel something vast holding it all. Maybe that's what true peace really is. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of understanding. And when you see that even suffering belongs, even the hard moments are part of this strange, beautiful tapestry, you stop dividing life into good and bad. You start to trust. You stop asking, why me? And start whispering, maybe this too is part of the journey. It's not about pretending you're fine. It's about letting everything be sacred, even the broken pieces. Because once you see that awareness holds both joy and pain equally, you realize nothing is wasted, not a single tear. There's a quiet surrender that happens then. You don't need life to be easy anymore. You just want it to be real. You can sit with whatever comes, love, loss, confusion, peace, and you know you're home in all of it. And maybe that's the softest truth of all. Awakening doesn't lift you out of life. It lets you fall fully into it, with open eyes and an unguarded heart. So when suffering comes, and it will, try not to turn away. Just stay. Feel it. Let it speak. You might be surprised by what it tells you. You might find that inside the pain is not emptiness, but love. A love so vast that it can hold everything. And when you touch that love, you begin to see that nothing is separate, not even sorrow. If these words are comforting you, if they're reminding you that your pain doesn't make you broken, stay with me. You're not alone in this. Every heart that's ever awakened has walked through fire and found light inside it. You will too. You can subscribe if you want to keep walking together, not for the sake of numbers, but so this little space of stillness can keep finding you when you need it most. Because in the next part, we'll talk about something tender, how to live in the world after awakening, how to work, love, and create while staying anchored in that quiet awareness that never leaves. You know, awakening isn't about floating above life like some quiet saint. It's about walking barefoot through the same messy world, only now with open eyes. The traffic still jams, the dishes still pile up, people still forget to text back. But something feels different, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You begin to move through it with a softer heart, a little more space inside you where once there was only noise. Maybe that's the real miracle. Awakening doesn't make your life special. It makes it real. You still laugh, you still get angry, you still make mistakes. But now, you see it all happen like watching clouds drift across the sky. You don't cling to every emotion. You don't fight every thought. You just notice, and that noticing becomes freedom. One morning, you might wake up late, spill your coffee, and feel that old frustration bubbling up, but something inside you smiles. because you can see it rising and falling, this wave of irritation that once felt like you. And you think, there it is again. You take a breath, you wipe the coffee, and the moment passes like wind moving through leaves. No drama, no blame, just life happening, simple and clean. I once met a man who said awakening made him feel more ordinary than ever. Before, he thought enlightenment would make him someone special, wise, calm, untouchable. But after years of seeking, when the illusion finally fell away, he said he just felt normal. He laughed easily, cried when he needed to, hugged strangers without fear. The biggest surprise, he told me, was realizing there's nothing to defend anymore. That's what freedom feels like, not some grand mystical state, but the peace of not having to be anyone. You start to live in rhythm with things, not in resistance to them. You still go to work, still pay bills, still get tired, but now there's a quiet understanding underneath it all, like the hum of a gentle engine always running. You begin to trust that even in chaos, life knows what it's doing. And maybe the greatest gift of awakening is how it changes the way you love. Before, love was filled with fear. The fear of losing, of not being enough, of being hurt. But now love becomes spacious. You don't love to possess. You love to share. You love without needing anything in return. Because love itself becomes who you are. It's no longer something you do. It's what naturally flows through you. A friend once told me that after her awakening, she could look into a stranger's eyes and feel the same tenderness she once reserved for her family. It's strange, she said, but I can't unsee it now. They were all the same light, just wearing different faces. She wasn't trying to be poetic. She was just describing how it feels when the walls of me and you begin to fall away. In everyday life, awakening looks like patience when you used to rush, forgiveness when you used to hold grudges, stillness when you used to react. It's not that you never get angry. You just don't become angry anymore. You see it come and you see it go, like waves that no longer scare you, because you've already felt the depth of the ocean. And sometimes, even in the middle of all this awareness, you forget, you lose your calm, you get pulled back into stories and emotions. That's okay. Truly, it's okay. Awakening doesn't mean perfection. It means you return home a little faster each time you wander away. You remember that awareness never leaves, even when you forget it's there. It's like the sun hidden behind clouds, not gone, just unseen for a while. Slowly, you realize that living awake doesn't mean escaping life. It means embracing it completely. You cook your meals with care. You listen more deeply. You laugh with your whole body. You become gentle with others because you've learned to be gentle with yourself. And that gentleness, it's contagious. It changes rooms without you saying a word. So maybe that's how awakening lives in the world. Quietly, humbly, through every small act of kindness, through every moment you choose to be present instead of lost in thought. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be lived. If you're still listening, maybe you're beginning to feel it too, that quiet shift inside, that whisper saying, I don't have to chase peace anymore. It's already here. And if this message finds you on a day when life feels heavy or confusing, stay with me. You're exactly where you need to be. We'll walk this path slowly, together, one breath at a time. Before you go, if you haven't already, you can subscribe, not as a promise to anyone, but as a way to keep returning here, to a space that reminds you to breathe, to slow down, to remember who you truly are. Because in the next part, we'll explore something beautiful, how to share awakening with the world without losing your stillness, how to live in service, to create, to give, while staying anchored in peace. There's something quietly beautiful that happens after awakening. It's not fireworks or halos, not the sudden urge to become a teacher or a saint. It's gentler than that, like the way dawn slowly fills a dark room. You start to feel this soft pull inside you, not to escape the world, but to love it more deeply. It's not about trying to save anyone or fix anything. It's more like an open heart that can't help but reach out. You see, before awakening, most of what we call helping comes from a place of need, the need to be needed, to be good, to feel worthy. But after awakening, giving becomes natural, effortless, like breathing. You don't get to get anything back. You give because something inside you overflows, and the only thing it can do is spill into the world. It's not about me helping you. It's simply life helping life. Maybe you felt it too, those moments when you hold the door open for someone, when you smile at a stranger who looks tired, when you listen without trying to fix. It's small, almost invisible, but it's sacred. That's what awakened service looks like. Quiet acts that carry deep love. No one needs to know. No one needs a praise. You just live in a way that makes the world a little softer. There's a story I once heard about a monk who swept the monastery paths every morning for 40 years. When someone asked him why he still swept even though he was already enlightened, he smiled and said, "Because the leaves keep falling." That's it. Enlightenment doesn't mean you stop serving. It means you serve without the story of, "I am the one doing this." The leaves fall, the broom moves, the path is cleared. Life takes care of itself. Sometimes people think awakening means withdrawing from a world. But true awakening doesn't isolate you. It connects you more deeply. You begin to see that every face you meet is another reflection of your own heart. You stop asking, "What do I get from this?" and start wondering, "What can love do here?" And that question changes everything. When you create, maybe through art, through your work, through your words, the motivation shifts. It's no longer about recognition or success. You just want to share what's real. You want your creations to carry presence, peace, a bit of that stillness that's changed your life. Maybe your voice shakes a little, maybe it's imperfect, but that's okay. The world doesn't need perfection. It needs truth. And when you work, no matter what kind of job it is, teaching, cleaning, writing, raising a family, you realize it can all be sacred. Every act, no matter how small, becomes a form of meditation when it's done with awareness. Folding clothes can be prayer. Answering emails can be mindfulness. Holding someone's hand can be grace in motion. There's no line between spiritual and ordinary anymore. It's all one seamless flow. But sometimes people will misunderstand you. They'll say you've changed. And they're right, you have, but not in the way they think. You simply stopped living from fear. You no longer need to prove yourself, to chase approval, to control every outcome. You become quiet inside, and that quietness can look strange in a world addicted to noise. But don't shrink from it. The world needs your calm more than your words. There will be moments when your heart feels open and fragile, when other people's suffering moves through you like your own. And it's okay to feel that. Don't close off. Just remember that compassion doesn't mean drowning in pain. It means standing steady in love, soft but strong, tender but grounded. The awakened heart can hold both joy and sorrow without breaking. Maybe that's a secret no one tells you. Awakening isn't the end of the path. It's the beginning of a new kind of living, one where every act, no matter how simple, becomes a way to share the light you found. You start to understand that you don't need to preach truth. You just need to be it. The way you move, the way you speak, the way you listen, That's your teaching. So if you ever wonder how to serve the world, start small. Start with presence. Bring your full attention to whoever is in front of you. When you listen, really listen. When you touch, really touch. When you love, love without a story. That's how the world begins to heal, one genuine moment at a time. And if what you're hearing right now resonates, if it touches that quiet place inside you that's been longing for something real, stay close. Subscribe if you want to keep walking this path together, not for views or numbers, just as a way to keep the circle of stillness alive, to keep reminding each other that peace is possible even here, even now. In the next part, we'll explore something many people overlook, the return to simplicity. How, after awakening, life starts to strip itself down to what really matters. Less noise, fewer distractions, more truth. The art of living lightly, but deeply. There's a moment that comes quietly after awakening, when all the chasing, all the noise, all the trying to become someone just falls away. You start to look around and realize that the things you thought mattered so much don't hold the same weight anymore. The titles, the opinions, the constant scrolling for meaning, they fade like waves dissolving back into the sea. What's left isn't emptiness. It's peace. A still, soft peace that feels like home. You begin to notice small things again. The sound of the wind through the trees, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the slow rhythm of your own breathing. You stop rushing through moments and start living them. Maybe your morning coffee becomes a meditation, or the way your dog looks at you makes you tear up a little. Life feels more tender, more intimate, because you're finally here for it. And maybe you realize how little you actually need. Not in a forced, minimalist way, just naturally. You don't crave so much anymore, because you're already full. The space you once filled with distractions starts to open, and in that space, gratitude quietly blooms. You start giving things away, old clothes, heavy memories, even old versions of yourself. You don't lose anything. You simply lighten the load. There's this quiet joy that comes from not needing to prove, not needing to win, not needing to be seen. You might still set goals, but they're softer now. You work not to become someone, but to express what's already inside you. You begin to understand that simplicity isn't about having less. It's about being more real, more present, more free. Sometimes people will ask, don't you miss your old life? The ambition, the rush, the plans? And maybe a part of you smiles, because you remember what that felt like, the constant reaching, the restless heart. But now, you see how exhausting it was to live always chasing the next thing. You've learned that peace isn't found at the top of the mountain. It's right here, in the quiet breath you're taking right now. You start to find beauty in ordinary things. The way someone's laughter echoes through a room, the smell of rain, the way the sky turns gold before sunset. These moments, once overlooked, become sacred. You don't need a reason to smile anymore. Life itself becomes enough. And in that simplicity, something amazing happens. You become available again, for love, for presence, for truth. You're no longer too busy building an image or defending a story. You can finally look someone in the eyes and really see them. You can forgive easily, let go quickly, because you understand now that nothing is truly yours to hold. Maybe you find yourself cleaning your space, cooking slowly, walking barefoot in the grass. These aren't spiritual acts in the way people talk about them. They're just life. And when you live them fully, they become sacred without needing a name. The divine hides in the details, always has. Sometimes the world will still try to pull you back into its rush. It'll whisper, you're falling behind. You should be doing more. And maybe you'll feel that tug, that old familiar voice. But now you'll smile gently and say, "It's okay. I'm not behind. I'm here." That's the secret. You've finally arrived. You start to understand that the greatest luxury isn't wealth or fame. It's peace of mind, the ability to wake up each morning without that heavy ache of not enough, the freedom to sit in silence without needing to fill it, the quiet knowing that this, right here, is what you were always looking for. And if you've come this far with me, maybe something inside you feels it too, that longing to live simply, to let go of the noise and return to what's real. If it resonates, if it touches something true, take a deep breath with me. Let it be a reminder that simplicity isn't something you find. It's something you return to. So stay with me. Subscribe if you want, not as a follower, but as a friend walking the same path, a path of quiet truth, gentle presence, and deep simplicity. Together, we'll keep exploring how to live fully awake in a world that's forgotten how to slow down. In the next part, we'll talk about something that surprises many, how even after awakening, challenges still come, pain still visits, but the way you meet them changes everything. We'll explore how suffering turns into wisdom when the heart is open. There's a tender truth about awakening that no one really talks about. Pain doesn't disappear. Life doesn't suddenly become easy or perfectly smooth. The rain still falls, people still leave, and the heart still breaks sometimes. But something deep inside you changes, not the world, but the way you meet it. Before awakening, pain feels like an enemy. You resist it, hide from it, or try to fix it as fast as you can. You tell yourself, this shouldn't be happening. But after awakening, there's this quiet shift. You start to see that pain isn't here to punish you. It's here to open you. It's not a wall anymore. It's a doorway. And behind that doorway, there's something sacred waiting. Understanding, tenderness, truth. You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin to whisper, "Okay, I'm listening." You breathe with what hurts instead of running from it. You hold your sadness the way a mother holds her crying child, gently, patiently, with love. That's when the miracle happens. The pain doesn't vanish, but it softens. It loses its sharp edges. It becomes a part of the dance instead of the storm. Maybe you've had those nights too, when everything feels heavy, when the world goes quiet, and the only sound left is your own heart beating through the ache. In those moments, it's okay to cry. It's okay to not have it all together. You don't have to be strong all the time. Real strength isn't in pretending you're fine. It's in being honest enough to feel it all without letting it destroy you. Awakening doesn't mean you float above life. It means you sink deeply into it. Even the hard parts. You learn that joy and sorrow are not opposites. They're threads of the same cloth. The more open you are to pain, the more open you become to love. Because the same heart that breaks is the one that feels. The same openness that lets grief and also lets grace in. There's a quiet wisdom in the way suffering shapes you. It humbles you, softens you, teaches you to listen. It strips away what's fake until only what's real remains. Maybe you lose something, a dream, a person, a version of yourself. But in the space that loss creates, something gentle begins to grow. Understanding, compassion, a deeper capacity to love. Sometimes, when people awaken, they think they'll never feel sadness again. But that's not true. You still feel everything, maybe even more deeply, but you no longer drown in it. You stand in the middle of the storm and realize you are the sky. The thunder passes, but the sky remains vast, untouched. Pain moves through you like clouds through open air, real but temporary. You begin to see suffering in others, and instead of turning away, you move closer, not to fix them, not to preach, but to be there. Sometimes presence is the most powerful medicine. When you walk through your own darkness, you stop judging other people's shadows. You simply sit beside them and let your quiet say, "You're not alone." And there will be days when the world still breaks your heart. You'll still lose people. You'll still have doubts. You'll still feel that sting of being human. But the difference is, you won't close your heart anymore. You'll let it break open, wider and wider, until love can move freely through it. Because that's what awakening truly is. Not an escape from pain, but an intimacy with it. Maybe that's why awakened souls seem so gentle. It's not because they've never suffered. It's because they've suffered consciously. They've learned that every tear carries wisdom, and every ending hides a beginning. They've stopped asking for a perfect life, and started asking for a real one. So if you're in pain right now, if something in your life feels heavy, don't rush to get over it. Sit with it. Breathe with it. Let it teach you. Maybe it's not breaking you. Maybe it's breaking you open. And if these words reach that quiet, tender place inside you, if they remind you that it's okay to feel, to not be okay, to simply be human, then stay with me. Subscribe if you want, not as a follower, but as someone walking the same fragile, beautiful path. We'll keep exploring it together, one breath at a time. In the next part, we'll talk about what comes after the storm, the quiet joy that grows out of acceptance, the kind of happiness that doesn't depend on circumstances, the peace that stays even when life changes. There's a tender truth about awakening that no one really talks about. Pain doesn't disappear. Life doesn't suddenly become easy or perfectly smooth. The rain still falls, people still leave, and the heart still breaks sometimes. But something deep inside you changes, not the world, but the way you meet it. Before awakening, pain feels like an enemy. You resist it, hide from it, or try to fix it as fast as you can. You tell yourself, this shouldn't be happening. But after awakening, there's this quiet shift. You start to see that pain isn't here to punish you. It's here to open you. It's not a wall anymore. It's a doorway. And behind that doorway, there's something sacred waiting. Understanding, tenderness, truth. You stop asking, why me? And begin to whisper, okay, I'm listening. You breathe with what hurts instead of running from it. You hold your sadness the way a mother holds her crying child, gently, patiently, with love. That's when the miracle happens. The pain doesn't vanish, but it softens. It loses its sharp edges. It becomes a part of the dance instead of the storm. Maybe you've had those nights too, when everything feels heavy, when the world goes quiet, and the only sound left is your own heart beating through the ache. In those moments, it's okay to cry. It's okay to not have it all together. You don't have to be strong all the time. Real strength isn't in pretending you're fine. It's in being honest enough to feel it all without letting it destroy you. Awakening doesn't mean you float above life. It means you sink deeply into it. Even the hard parts. You learn that joy and sorrow are not opposites. They're threads of the same cloth. The more open you are to pain, the more open you become to love. Because the same heart that breaks is the one that feels. The same openness that lets grief and also lets grace in. There's a quiet wisdom in the way suffering shapes you. It humbles you, softens you, teaches you to listen. It strips away what's fake until only what's real remains. Maybe you lose something, a dream, a person, a version of yourself. But in the space that loss creates, something gentle begins to grow. Understanding, compassion, a deeper capacity to love. Sometimes, When people awaken, they think they'll never feel sadness again. But that's not true. You still feel everything, maybe even more deeply, but you no longer drown in it. You stand in the middle of the storm and realize you are the sky. The thunder passes, but the sky remains vast, untouched. Pain moves through you like clouds through open air, real but temporary. You begin to see suffering in others, and instead of turning away, you move closer. Not to fix them, not to preach, but to be there. Sometimes presence is the most powerful medicine. When you walk through your own darkness, you stop judging other people's shadows. You simply sit beside them and let your quiet say, "You're not alone." And there will be days when the world still breaks your heart. You'll still lose people. You'll still have doubts. You'll still feel that sting of being human. But the difference is, you won't close your heart anymore. You'll let it break open, wider and wider, until love can move freely through it. Because that's what awakening truly is. Not an escape from pain, but an intimacy with it. Maybe that's why awakened souls seem so gentle. It's not because they've never suffered. It's because they've suffered consciously. They've learned that every tear carries wisdom, and every ending hides a beginning. They've stopped asking for a perfect life and started asking for a real one. So if you're in pain right now, if something in your life feels heavy, don't rush to get over it. Sit with it. Breathe with it. Let it teach you. Maybe it's not breaking you. Maybe it's breaking you open. And if these words reach that quiet, tender place inside you, if they remind you that it's okay to feel, to not be okay, to simply be human, then stay with me. Subscribe if you want, not as a follower, but as someone walking the same fragile, beautiful path. We'll keep exploring it together, one breath at a time. In the next part, we'll talk about what comes after the storm, the quiet joy that grows out of acceptance, the kind of happiness that doesn't depend on circumstances, the peace that stays even when life changes.